Good morning. I'm Justin Waldner with Case IH, and I have with me my partner in crime, Louis Melanson, and we are your high horsepower tractor specialists. How you doing today, Louis? What are we talking about?
Actually, I'm doing pretty darn good. Basically today, what we want to try to do is we're going to talk about the optimizing of your tractor so that you can start the seeding season and make it through the whole seeding season, hopefully without any glitches or any issues. So that's why we're doing these presentations, to kind of highlight the maintenance that you need to do on these units so that, again, get ready before seeding time gets here. So first of all is, since I'm the shorter one of the group.
Yeah, Louis, get that hood on for us. Show us how easily that nice hood opens up. So basically in the morning, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check our engine compartment, check our fluids, and maybe lower our radiators down, check for leaks, and make sure things are nice and clean. Of course, we got a brand new 2021 AFS Connect Steiger, so things are spick and span here today. So we just wanted to reference how easy it is to lower this radiator. This is our secondary cooling package. On the 580 and 620 Steigers, and also the 540, we have two-stage cooling systems, and this is our secondary radiator. So, all good, Louis?
Okay, the one thing that I wanted to kind of discuss when you get in here, because when you guys are going through your tractors, you're going to get in here and you're going to open this up, and it's probably going to be, I suspect, if it's not a new tractor, radiator's probably going to be dirty, so you're probably going to have to get the power washer out and clean the coolers, the radiators properly. One caution that I always mention to people is when you're putting water into a radiator, make sure that it dries up. Leave the tractor there, don't start it, just leave it there, let it dry up. So then that way there's no water that's caught inside the fins, and they'll dry up in there, and eventually dirt will accumulate onto those particles that are left on there. So wash it, let it dry up, then start her up, and you can get back to work, okay? So that's one thing. The next thing is the coolant system, okay? So there is some maintenance that needs to be taken care of, and some of the things that people forget. It's amazing how people will sit there and they will get really nervous about a hydraulic pump, okay? Because they will replace the hydraulic oil because they're scared that they are going to damage their hydraulic pumps, and they think that it's a very expensive piece. The most important part, or the most expensive part of the unit, is actually the engine. And none of us pay attention to the engine, coolant system. Okay, and I always joke around about the fact that we have special hoses on the radiator that are only good for 1,200 hours, and then they blow off by themselves. And that's so that you replace the antifreeze. Okay? No, we do not design hoses like that. Okay, the hoses are good hoses, but sometimes I wish we did, because nobody pays any attention to the cooling system. Cooling system on these tractors are very important, okay, because you're running as high as 620 horsepower plus, and these engines need to be cooled down. So getting back to draining the radiator and putting new coolant in there. We now use what we call ActiFull antifreeze. Okay,
Organic acid technology antifreeze.
Yes. Okay, so it's kind of a new term. Like in the last couple of years, this is what most of the industry is using now. So buy the proper antifreeze and then refill your system. Now on the tractor.
How do we drain this, Louis? How do we drain the coolant on this radiator?
On these over here with a 13-liter engine, the ones that have the dual turbochargers on it, the cooling system is kind of a little trickier to go and drain and refill. Okay, so basically, if you forget everything that Louis tells you, is make sure you go back to the operator's manual. The instructions are in there. It tells you exactly how to go about doing this, but we're going to run through it quickly.
So I just want to point out coupler and hose fitting that we have. So this is the storage position right here. So this coupler will be removed from storage and coupled right to this port. Obviously, the radiator will be in the raised position, and that is in the instructions, as Louis referenced, in the operator's manual for draining the coolant system.
So basically, that's all there is to it. And when you're refilling, actually, there's a process again that you need to go in there and turn the key, fill the coolant system, turn the key on, just on. Don't start the engine, just turn the key on, and then you'll hear a pump running, and that's what gets the air out of the cooling system, so that you can fill the cooling system properly. Okay, so again, pretty simple operation. If you get confused out of it, just go back, refer back to the operator's manual, walks you in step by step. So makes it pretty simple. Now,
so let's point out our reservoirs for the cooling system. They're both on the right-hand side of the engine. We have one canister down here and one up in the upper area. Like Louis mentioned, this tractor has the dual cooling system package. So that's why we have the two reservoirs. And also, conveniently, on the right-hand side of the engine is our engine oil check. So every morning, we're going to raise our hood and also check our engine oil right in that location.
All right, now you're gonna ask yourself the questions like, why is this so important? I have to drain the antifreeze. Okay, so we tell you that 2,400 hours is when you drain the antifreeze. Doesn't hurt anything to drain it prior to that, but we're good to go to 2,400 hours. Okay, so you got to ask yourself the question, why do I have to change the antifreeze? Does it break down? Well, there's a phenomena that happens inside the engine. Okay, and it's been there for years. This is nothing new. It's been there for ever since I've been around. And it's called a process of cavitation erosion, is what it's called. And basically what happens is the coolant is in the water jacket, goes around the sleeves, and as the pistons, the combustions happen inside the piston, it takes the water jacket and it makes it vibrate. And it vibrates real fast because, as you know, at 2,100 RPM, there's a lot of explosion happening inside there. So as the coolant is moved away from the sleeve, it creates vacuum pockets. And these vacuum pockets, what they'll do is they'll implode. Okay, they don't explode, they implode. Okay, so, and I always use the reference, if you've got a boat on the water somewhere, and you see all the bubbles that are coming from the prop, those are not air bubbles. Those are just pockets of void, is what it is. Same process happens inside here. So that cavitation eventually will eat the side of the sleeve, and it's more prominent on the compression side. So that way it just keeps eating at it until finally, it pokes a hole right through the sleeve, and now you have antifreeze in the oil pan. So that's the importance of maintaining the additives that are actually in the coolant system. And the new OAT cooling system creates a nice layer of chemicals onto the sleeves. So as those air pockets are being created, they try to implode, but they can't get to the metal. So two things that it does, it coats the sleeve and also allows the cooling system to travel a little faster inside the cooling system. So all in all, just keep the engine cool, and it minimizes the cavitation erosion if you change the antifreeze. Okay, again, don't want to scare anybody, but not something that you have to change every once a month. We say 2,400 hours is the interval. Okay, so if you change it sooner, you're not going to hurt anything. Just some of you people might be using additives inside the radiator. Sometimes that is not always a good practice, okay, because you can over-concentrate the system. And if you over-concentrate it, then it's going to act the other way. So probably best practice is just to change the antifreeze, and then life is good. Anything else to add?
Yep, thank you. And also I'm going to reference back to the engine oil. We have industry-leading 600-hour engine oil intervals. And of course, with our Tier 4B engines and our SCR-only technology, that really reduces the maintenance cost for our customers. So remember, our engine oil intervals are up to 600-hour oil changes. Well, my oil's good, Louis. Coolant's good. Let's move over to the other side.
We're going to slide over
Let's put this rad back up. Two quick pins on either side. Lower our hood. And since we're at the front of the tractor, I'm just going to point out one new feature for 2021 on the new AFS Connect Steiger with the luxury cab package. You are going to get standard equipment, front and rear facing cameras, which you are going to visualize that into the Pro 1200 monitor, which we're going to talk about a little more later on. So, all right, sounds good.
Okay, all right, let's move on a little further here. Okay, first of all, is you're going to notice that the hood comes down and we got the screening on the side. That's to prevent debris from getting inside the engine compartment. So it keeps the engine nice and clean inside so that you don't have to worry about debris getting inside there. So that's why we use those shields on. All right, now moving on to the track system. Okay, we've been building quad tracks since
1996.
All right, so and a quad track is basically a true quad track tractor. It's built to have tracks on. It's not just taking a four-wheel drive tractor, knocking the wheels off, and adding tracks. This is a truly built quad track unit. That's the only one on the market. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the system that we use on here. A couple of neat things that we have on our tracks versus the competition is the fact that these idlers over here, the two big idlers, are actually not at the same level as the three boogies that you see on the bottom. Okay, they're raised up a little higher, and that allows the front of the track over here, I can stick my toe underneath the track, and that stops the scuffing of the tracks as you're going down on the pavement, for example. Okay, so they're always a little higher up, so the track has a better circular curve down there so that it eliminates the scuffing of the tracks.
Which ultimately is going to increase track life, right, Louis?
Which absolutely will increase track life. And while we're talking about track life, sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking because you just bought a brand new tractor, you drove it home, and then you start looking at the lugs over here, and you're going to see that there's some scuffing on the side of the lugs. When you use the Armor Lug track from ContiTech, there is a layer on here that's actually, it's a break-in layer, if you want to call it that. And sometimes it'll look a little scuffed up on here, and you think like, oh, no, don't get nervous. You're going to see that. That happens, okay? It's just a protective coating that's on there to help the track break itself in. Now, a couple of changes that we made on here in the last couple of years is this portion over here used to be a fabricated piece. And in some of the application that we were running, like the rougher operation, especially on dirt buggies and running in rocks and all that kind of stuff, you could develop some cracks into this member. So now we make it's a formed cast piece on here, so eliminates all the issues that we might have run into at that point. Now, there is also isolations on here. There's rubber pads mounted on here. It gives you a little bit of suspension so that it's not so rough when you're operating, especially going down the road.
We're also going to point out our standard equipment oil cover caps on our boogie wheels, as far as our idlers and the mid rollers as well. This is a new design cap. It's a little bit different if you're trading up from a few-year-old tractor. You can now see we actually have a reference point for an operating level. Below here, you're going to want to top it up to this mark here. Before we only had a curved glass, now we actually have reference points for checking our levels. And those are standard equipment on a quad track.
And these, if you want to replace them on your older tractors, you can put these new ones on there as well. So
I got this bag of floor dry with me today, Louis. What do I do with that? I got a brand new quad track. Why do I need this?
All right, that happens to be probably one of the most important thing there is for the track, for conditioning the tracks. Okay, so when you first get started on a brand new tractor, it is not a bad idea to just grab a bag of floor dry and just toss it inside the tracks, all 4 tracks, and then go for a drive. And what it does is the rubber on here is kind of a tacky rubber when it's new. Okay, so it'll want to try to stick to the track itself. And if you happen to just grab the tractor and take off, and brand new tractor, just got it, and I'm going to drive it home. And I'm driving 50 miles home. okay? There could be some of the rubber will come off of the roller and be attached to the track, or vice versa, okay? So floor dry, what it does, you throw it in here and it conditions the track, makes it nice and smooth, and get the tackiness out of the rubber. So
Tracks are expensive, floor dry is cheap, use floor dry.
yeah, and I always says in the field, when you're working in the field, you're not going to carry a bag of floor dries with you. So as you stop to go check your air seeder or whatever, the best medicine for your tracks is to just grab the dirt and shove it inside there. Fill them on all fours, and dirt is also a good, for lack of a better word, a good lubricant for the tracks. And it'll help maintain the tracks where they last a lot longer.
After about 100 hours of running in the field with dirt getting into the tracks, like Louis mentioned, at that point they should be lubricated sufficiently. So, another good check, as good practice, is checking the temperature of our internal drive lugs. And we want to maintain basically a similar temperature from either side. There's no specific temperature that we're looking for. We're looking for even. If you got one side that's much warmer than the other side, that's a good indication that your tracks are likely out of alignment. And at that point, you need to reference your operator's manual. Basically, this yoke plate, these 6 bolts will need to be loosened, and we have our adjustment bolt here, which is going to move this yoke plate back and forth, which that's how we move the track in or out, depending on which way we need to go. But basically, as good practice, check the temperature of the internal drive lugs, make sure they're warming up evenly.
And then good practice too when you're doing this is grab your big sledgehammer and beat on here, because that tends to rust in between the two over here. So if you give it a good whack, it'll break it loose, so then these
to ensure the yoke plate is moving freely. Yeah, perfect. So, I think we're good with our tracks, Louis.
Okay, all right, moving on further back.
Oh, one more item. Under the buddy seat, you're going to find this kit. Anybody know what this hose is for? There is a coupler right in this area here. In the result where a track would actually have to be changed or removed, of course our tracks are tensioned by the hydraulic system. You will take this hose, couple it onto that port, and this is how you relieve the pressure, the hydraulic tension that's on the tracks. How do we tension our tracks, Louis, once the track's back on?
Once I get my tracks back on, all I got to do is jump in the tractor, start her up, turn the steering wheel, or activate a remote. Either one, okay? Because the hydraulic system is the one that actually tensions the track. So there's no more maintenance that you need to do to tighten up the track, the suspension. Just turn the steering wheel or activate a remote, and it'll immediately go and tighten up your tracks. So.
All right, Louis, I think our tracks are in good shape, and it's time to jump up in the cab. So, brand new with our 2021 AFS Connect tractors, the first time in the morning, the first time Louis is going to open the door after the tractor's been sitting, you're going to hear a breaker engage. You're going to basically hear basically a clunk, so to speak. So basically that is the tractor automatically engaging the electrical system. New for the AFS Connect Steiger is a BCM, or body control module, which automatically disconnects the power after the tractor's been sitting for around 8 minutes. So when you open that door the first thing in the morning and you hear that breaker engage, that's totally normal. And when you shut the tractor off at the end of the day, approximately 8 minutes later, you're going to hear that same breaker disengage. And that is the tractor automatically cutting out the electrical systems. So now Louis is up in the cab of our new AFS Connect Steiger, and we got a few new features that we're going to talk about, a few new buttons that we never had before. So up on the headliner on the right-hand side, there's a couple new switches there. One's labeled 1 and 2, and that is a selectable button for our light configurations. We can now set up 2 preset lights, depending on which lights you want to have on or off. I'll show you in the monitor in a little bit later on how do we set that up. Also up on that area, we have our HVAC controls in our radio system and our switches for our brand new power retractable mirrors. So not only can we adjust the convex of the mirrors, we can actually telescope the mirrors in and out, which is brand new for this season on this cab. For convenience-wise, we've added multiple power ports, USB charging ports, cigarette plugs, ISO power connectors, and also a 115-volt household outlet as well, which is brand new for this cab. So, sounds good, Louis?
Okay.
What are those really nice books that are behind the seat there, Louis? What is that?
A lot of you people probably have never seen these. Okay, they're hiding in behind the seat. Okay, operator's manual, kind of nice and handy. As a matter of fact, there's more than one. Kind of scary a little bit because when you see the thickness of both of them, it's going to take you a little while to read them. But trust me, when I tell you that there's something on page 3-59, I have no idea what it is, but I can guarantee you it's going to be very important. So make sure that you refer back to the manual. All the information is in there for the whole tractor, front to back. Okay, so everything I talk about and Justin talks about is all in here. We're not making anything up. Now, inside the cab, the one thing that kind of happens that we hear about all the time, my air conditioning doesn't work properly. Okay, and sometimes it's as simple as the guy tucking his jacket back here behind the seat. Do not put anything behind the seat because that's where your cab recirculating filter is, and it will affect the operation of your air conditioning. Okay? Now, there's a filter back here, so you need to take the filter out of here. It's called a cab recirculating filter. And no, you don't wash it. You just replace it with a new one. Remember, you're the one that's sitting inside here, and it's going to be awfully dusty out there when you're operating your air seeder, okay? So the environment inside the cab is kind of nice to have a nice clean environment and comfortable environment. So take the filter, replace it, put a new one in there, all right?
All right, Louis, are we done in the cab?
You betcha.
All right, it's time to reference some more service points that we have at the articulating joint of the tractor, one being our hydraulic tanks or a hydraulic system, as well as the transmission. These are two separate reservoirs, but however, we do use the same fluid, Case IH Hytran oil. Okay, so on the side of the tank here, we do have a sight glass that gives you your operating range. One thing to keep in mind, obviously, we need to be between these two reference points here. If the tractor has been sitting for maybe 2 weeks or more, the oil is going to settle into the axles of the tractor because it is a common system, and that potentially could lower the oil level on the sight glass. You want to make sure that the tractor has been started first, and the oil level will likely bring itself back up to the operating range. If the oil is down here after the tractor has been sitting for a while and you add oil, you are going to be spilling oil out the top of the hydraulic tank. So if the tractor has been sitting, make sure you fire it up, and it's very likely the tractor will get back up to the operating range. It's a little bit harder to see, but back in this area here on a power shift transmission, we do have another sight glass, which is for the transmission only. It's a smaller sight glass in this area, and you got to make sure that it's also within the operating range. Okay. Since we're talking on this side, this is a DEF tank fill. We do have DEF tank fills located on either side of the tractor. The other one is on behind the service door on the right-hand side. These nice little brackets. What are these brackets for, Louis? What do I do with these?
Well, I always ask myself the question, and then I went and looked in the operator's manual, and I got my answer. Okay, so basically you take that out of there, the zip tie off, the clamp turns around, and it goes against the cap, and you put a lock on there. So you can lock people from going and taking the cap off for the DEF. You can do it for the hydraulic tanks, and you can do it for the transmission. So if you don't want anybody to sabotage your tractors, that's what those little clamps are on there for.
Sounds good.
Now,
we want to make sure that we also...
Justin,
what's those yellow
what am I
forgetting here?
What's those yellow things there for?
Oh, yes. We always like to think safety first at Case IH. So when you are working on your tractor, we do have cylinder lockouts, which are located there in their storage position. Those simply get mounted to the cylinders, you put your pins in, and that's going to keep the tractor from potentially articulating when you don't want it to. And especially also if the tractor is being transported.
And the other thing, just remember, you're getting in between here because you're going to come in here to grease these different points on here. Okay, so as you're greasing these points, you don't want somebody to jump inside the cab and actually start the engine, and you're in between here because you will get crushed. Okay, so that's why these things are very important. Use them, because I got an old saying that I use all the time, you know, like for every farmer that gets crushed over or whatever, you don't reproduce yourself fast enough. Okay, so we just lost one farmer. So caution, always precaution, make sure you stay safe as possible when you get into these articulation areas. Okay, so again, they're there free of charge, so make sure you use them. Now the other thing, Justin, is since I'm the shorter guy,
It's time to fill this fuel tank, Louis. How do we fill this fuel tank?
So there's Louis, just a little guy, not that strong anymore. So I got the big hose that I'm bringing up here. I got my platform that I can stand on right here. But there's a spot right here that I can actually put my hose and hook it onto here so I don't have to carry it all the way up there. Okay, so I'm going to have my hose. I'm going to put it right in here. And then I'm going to climb up here, grab my hose, and start fueling. Okay, nice and handy little spot to put your handle for your pump. Okay? Okay, the back here is also the...
I think that's new. Did we move that, Louis?
Yes. Okay, so this is the windshield washer bottle. So if you need to add water in here for your windshield washer, this is where you're going to do it. Again, nice and comfortable ladder to get up in there to get that fueled up. So. Okay.
Sounds good.
We're going to move on towards the back end of the tractor now.
Okay, so we want to point out basically all the couplers and our drawbar features that we have on this tractor. New for 2021 is our newly designed rear remote valve. This tractor is equipped with 6 remotes, and it actually has the 3/4 inch combo coupler options. So remote valves 4 and 5 are actually 3/4 inch couplers, which we can now hook and uncouple hydraulic hoses under pressure. And the rest of the other 4 are still our standard 4 1/2-inch couplers. Okay. Along with the new valves, we have these pressure relief handles on each valve, which which is new for 2021, which is definitely going to assist in coupling and uncoupling the hoses.
Under pressure.
Under pressure, that's correct.
Right. Because if you look at the previous tractors, before we went to these couplers, I always refer back to the point that if you're going to be hooking up your air seeder, you're probably best to just shut the engine off and hook up your lines. That way you don't have back pressure into your couplers and that. Okay, so it's always a good practice. These ones here with the levers, you don't have to worry about it. You can just plug them in there and they'll be able to hook up under pressure. So.
Okay, so just to point out a few more things, these are our Power Beyond couplers. We got our pressure and return, as well as the load sense if you're using an implement that requires Power Beyond, and also our zero pressure case drain return. Basically for your air seeder fan, if you have a case drain, that's where that's going to couple there. So back to this fancy kit that we have underneath the buddy seat of the tractor. There's a small little fitting inside this little package here. So this tractor is equipped with 2 pumps. So we have our main hydraulic pump as well as a twin flow pump. The main hydraulic pump is feeding the left-hand valve stack. The second pump is feeding the right-hand valve stack. And we have 2 scenarios that we can set this up. We have twin flow and parallel flow. Twin flow means this valve stack is running on the main pump by itself, completely separate from the right-hand stack, which is pressured by the second pump. If you need maximum flow to all valves at all times, you need to take this little fitting inside the operator's manual, and it will show you the process in joining these 2 valve stacks in what we call parallel flow. Basically, this port needs to be removed, and you need to install this fitting, which the operator's manual will give you detailed instructions on that. What drawbar do we have on here, Louis? It looks like a Cat 4, but I think we got a bigger one, don't we?
Yes, we also have a Cat 5. So Cat 5, basically the hole's going to be a lot bigger, and quite often you get to the implement and guess what? Whoops, the pin is way too big. there is a conversion kit that you can buy. It's a pin reducer kit that gets you from a category 5 down back to a category 4. Okay, so again, it is available.
So I'll just point out one more thing. Like if you've never had that Cat 5 drawbar before, you likely will have implements on the farm where that bin reducer kit will be necessary because you will not be able to get the pin into a smaller clevis. So, what other fancy features does this drawbar have, Louis?
That looks pretty cool, that thing.
How does that work?
Okay, so basically it's a quick pin assembly. So you just back up to the implement, and the minute the implement hits this little tab that back here, it will automatically allow the pin to fall down into place. Again, you don't have to get out to hook up to your implement. So pretty slick unit. Again, standard equipment.
ISO connector for your ISO implements, standard equipment, as well as your electrical connector for your air seeder or whatever you're hooking up to the back. This tractor is equipped with a PTO as well. And one thing I will point out, Steiger tractors are definitely designed from the ground up to have a PTO. Our gearbox and our driveline is fully in line to the transmission. We do not run an offset gearbox, which allows us to have maximum power to the PTO.
And the other nice part is you see that opening back in here? That gives the operator great visibility from the cab out to his drawbar pin, which is also by design. So
it's a lot easier to hook up to something if you can see the drawbar pin. It takes a two-man job down to one. So, well, I think that'll get us hooked up, Louis.
All right.
We'll chat about some monitors.
We're going to chat about monitors now.
All right, well, for convenience today, we have removed some very important components from the cab. We've got them mounted down here today so you can see really easily what we're going to talk about. Something that's brand new for 2021 in the AFS Connect Steiger is our new Pro 1200 monitor. Our Viz2 display, which is basically replacing the A-post. This is mounted up on the front right-hand corner of the cab. This is not a touchscreen. It's basically visualization only. It's going to give you really important parameters that you need to be aware of. Your transmission selection, gear selection, fluids, fuel, depth, temperature, and as well as your miles per hour. Okay? But basically, our Pro 1200 monitor is where we're going to be making all of our adjustments. Okay? So right now, I'm just going to point out all of the button controls and their locations on the new armrest. I'll start with the multifunction handle, which again, this is brand new in the AFS Connect Steiger. We have our power drive control, which if you have a power shift tractor, this is your shift up and shift down. And as I shift up and shift down, it is going to tell me my gear in this area here. This is my shuttle forward and reverse, my auto guidance and gauge, my 4 customizable buttons, which are labeled 5, 6, 7, and 8, 2 dedicated hydraulic buttons, 3-point hitch if equipped. We have our end of row function resume button, as well as the dial, which is how you set your APM speed, and I'll get into that a little bit more later. We have our constant engine 1 and 2, our APM road and field mode, as well as our engine brake. In this area here, we have a new encoder. If I depress the encoder, it's going to bring up this part of the display, and I can rotate through hydraulics, my lights, media, as well as my HVAC. We have hotkeys in this area here too, which if I go ahead and press one of these 4 hotkeys, which are hydraulics, media, HVAC, and telephone, will take me directly to that page in the monitor. Moving over to this area here, we have our auto diff locks, as well as one more customizable button, number 9. Underneath our armrest, we have more hydraulic control. Rotate this dial to select a remote valve that you want to make adjustments to, and then you can go ahead and adjust the flow. This tractor does not have a 3-point hitch, but if it did, this is where you will set your height limits for your 3-point hitch as well. This pad can be moved up or down to expose those dials at all times if you choose. These yellow buttons here are dedicated PTO. If I press this button here, it's going to take me directly to the PTO page in the monitor. The middle button is going to toggle between auto and heavy load engagement, as well as your PTO intent. So if you want to start the PTO and get out of the seat, you need to depress this button to enable the intent, which will allow the PTO to run when you exit the cab. As well, here is our PTO engagement switch itself. In this area here, we have more customizable buttons. The first button here will take me right to the customization page in the monitor, and then we have 4 more buttons that we can program many different features of the tractor, as well as 3-point hitch control if equipped. Near the front, we have new remote control levers, 1 through 6, because we have 6 remotes on this tractor, and of course you can see that they're all color-coded, and we can actually customize the location of those within the monitor, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And they all have a lockout feature as well, so that will lock out the remote if you don't want to use it. Okay. One thing I will point out on the remote valves themselves, there is a detent position as well as float. So depending on what function you're going to do hydraulically, just be aware that there is a first detent and then float position. Okay. So into the display itself now, I want to show you basically how we've laid out this monitor. Okay. And I'm going to start out by the top right-hand corner. We're going to have our auto guidance status or engage button. We're going to have our grower farm field button menu. We're going to have the 7 cards menu, or some guys will refer to it as a toolbox, where we will do a lot of setups in this area. And we have basically a section for all tractor parameters. This page cannot be adjusted whatsoever. It gives basically all vital information of the tractor: temperatures, voltage readings, and so forth, okay? This page, you cannot make any edits to this page. Okay. We have our, if we want to set up different user profiles for different operators, that's done in this page. Oh, what's going on here? Someone is requesting to view your display. Would you like to grant access? What's going on here? So something really, really functional now in the AFS Connect Steigers is remote display viewing capability. So basically what's happening here right now, my dealer is requesting access to help me navigate my screen. So I know it's my dealer, so I'm going to say yes. So the service manager at the dealership, 20 miles away right now, is actually visualizing what's going on my display at his desktop computer, okay? So I basically said, yep, I'm going to allow him access, and in a moment or so, he is going to see what I'm seeing on my display at his computer. I'll see what he comes back here after a couple minutes, and he's going to help me navigate. So on the lower part of the monitor, we have our run screens, runs 1 through 7, and I'll show you how to make changes there as well. Okay, yeah. So now you can see this orange box surrounding the display. So at this point, that's indicating that your service manager or whoever at the dealership has requested access is now seeing what you are seeing in the cab. I need some help setting an A-B line. How can I do that? Okay, you see this little hand here that's popped up? Basically, my dealer is on his desktop software. He is indicating that I need to point and press on that button there. Okay, so this is going to be really functional to help you guys navigate and learn your display from someone who could be 20 miles away or 100 miles away. If you have your tractor on the AFS Connect portal, he is going to have that functionality. All right, so at this point, we're going to end remote display viewing and continue on. Okay, we're going to get into customizing our run screens. So basically, you choose your run screen. You're going to press and hold momentarily. It's going to say, do you want to go into edit mode? You're going to say yes. I'm going to select which run screen I want to make changes. So in this case here, I'm going to make a change to run 4. I'm going to delete this menu item here. I'm going to say OK. And now I want to select the plus button. I want to go into my tractor menu. Again, there are many different menus we can go into. And I want to put my engine hours. So I can take this, select my engine hours, and now my engine hours is in that location. And you can do that for all 7 run screens. And again, there's many different options that we can fully customize this display. If you want to edit the name, I'm simply going to press run 4 again. And now I can go ahead and edit the name. I'm just going to go put back in there run 4. But you can put whatever you would like. And to save the changes, you simply go ahead and hit the X. And now it's going to save your layout. So basically, we're going to show you how to set up a grower farm field as well as guidance lines. So if you're going to go into your field for the first time of the day, you basically need to go to the grower farm field menu and you need to answer these questions. You need to fill in the grower, the farm, the field, and the task that you want to complete for that field. Once those are filled up, we need to create an implement. That's going to be in the toolbox menu. We're going to create an implement. And you're going to select, in my case here, I want to go hook up to my air drill. So I've selected air drill. We're going to go seating. I have a drill with a tow behind air cart, and it's a Case IH 500 double chute. As you can see, those are already pre-populated. But basically, if you want to make a new item, a new implement, you're going to drop down and hit Add New. Once you've done that, you need to enter your measurements. This is where you're going to put in your implement width. So I have a 60-foot drill, which is 720 inches. My drill is centered, so I do not need an offset, but I do need to tell it how far back the drill is from the drawbar itself. So basically, you need to fill in those measurements as requested. Okay? So once that's completed, I can now go to my auto guidance page, which is on run 3 in this case. To make a new AB line, I'm going to go back to this top icon here on the right-hand side. I'm going to tell it I want to do a heading, but again, we have several other ones to pick from, straight, curves, pivots, but we're going to go heading for today. I want to go straight east. So you go ahead and use your compass until we want to go straight east, which is 90 degrees, and I'm going to hit apply. And now I have created a new AB line, okay? There are several new views with our new Pro 1200 monitor that we can toggle between. We have our bird's eye view, or we can also go from the side. Since this is based on an Android operating system, we can pinch and pull just like your smartphone, and you can really customize your view of the tractor. Once you have the view that you like, you can go ahead and we have a 1 and 2 camera here, which is a preset saved view. Simply press and hold. The screen will flash momentarily, and you have now saved that view. So if things get disoriented for you, you can simply go ahead and press 1, and it will take you right back to the tractor. Okay. We have a little compass up in the left-hand area. Go ahead and press the compass, and it will make the tractor drive true north as far as the view on the display. If the tractor is driving off to the sunset, simply pressing this button here will basically follow the tractor throughout the field. Okay? So that has set up a grower farm field, an implement, and a guidance line to get you operating. Okay? So now we're going to get into a little more detail on setting up tractor functions. So I'm going to go back into the toolbox, which is a menu with the 7 cards. And now I'm going to select my tractor. So on the right-hand side, you can scroll up and down, and these are all the different functions of the tractor. We have our HVAC. We have our lighting. And as I mentioned earlier, we now have 2 memory preset configurations that we can set up depending on your operation. We have our customizable armrest controls, which is going to be configuring our hydraulics, and I'll get into that right now. So with these new hydraulics, we can actually move remote valve 1 to remote valve 3 for an example. So if you actually plug the hydraulics into the rear of the tractor not quite how you intended, you can actually take number 1, the red valve, and move it to number 3 position simply by going into the 3rd position, selecting valve 1, and we have now moved the red valve, which is always valve number 1, to the 3rd position. Number 1 is now not assigned, but I can now put remote valve 3 into the 1st position, and it lights up yellow. We can do that for all 6 remotes. So now I'm going to switch from the multi-function handle because I've done my configurations there. Now I'm going to go to the customizable buttons. Simply open the drop-down menu, select buttons. So now I have dealing with the 4 buttons here, the 4 buttons here, and we have one by itself, number 9 down here. So those 9 buttons can be configured to a whole list of different functions. For an example, I am going to set up buttons 5 and 6 to control the radio. So we're going to go down and find button number 5, go into the settings, and now we have different sub-menus to pick from. Since I'm dealing with the radio, I'm going to go into the media. And as you can see here, I'm going to have volume up and volume down. So for button 5, I'm going to go volume down, confirm. Now it tells me button 5 is volume down. Now I'm going to go to button 6. Same thing, go back to media, select volume up, confirm. So now it's going to tell me buttons 5 and 6 are volume up and down. So now these buttons, 5 and 6, are going to control the radio volume. And like I mentioned, there are 9 buttons with many, many different functions available. As you can see, we have several sub-menus to pick from, and there is many, many features that can be customizable. So now we're onto the hydraulic remote section, and basically this is where you're going to set up all 8 or all 6 on this tractor remote valves. So you're going to open up valve number 1. This is where you're going to set your flow percentages as well as your timers and continuous flow if necessary. Simply go ahead and use the arrows, or go ahead and slide the bar left to right to make your adjustments. If motor mode is necessary in your application, to enable motor mode, you take the designated remote you're going to use, put it all the way into the float position, turn motor mode on, and now I have enabled motor mode. I simply return it to neutral, and now press the remote to the first detent, and now I have continuous flow in motor mode. To turn the hydraulic flow off, simply go ahead, pull the remote back, and now you've turned the flow off. So this is where you make all your changes for all hydraulic remotes.
Hey Justin, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir, Louis.
Why is it so important to set up the flow of my remote? Isn't it just put it all the way out, maximum flow to the back end of the tractor?
Well, you'd think so, Louis, but using excessive flow really creates horsepower loss, heat generation, and basically just poor performance of the tractor. If you do not require a full flow of on the implement, please take time to figure out what the implement requires. If you only need 50% of the flow, only use 50% of the flow. At the end of the day, you want the tractor to perform well, reduce fuel consumption, take the time to set up your flows.
So I got my air seeder behind, again, setting my flows. How do I do that? What's the procedure for setting up my flows? Okay, so you got functions back there. You got your lift and lower, correct? Okay, so now, does it take 10 gallons per minute to lift the implement, or does it take 20?
Well, depending on the air seeder.
I have no idea, correct?
That's right.
Okay, every air seeder on a lift cylinder, or any implement you put behind, if they have a cylinder on it, the cylinder has an orifice. The orifice is only so big, and I have no idea what the size of the orifice is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift it, and I'm going to count how much time it takes to go from lower to raise. and that back from raised position down to lower. And as soon as I see that the implement is no longer speeding up, then I back off on the flow control, just a hair. Back off on the flow. And then that way it will basically verify that that orifice that's back there is only going to take 6 gallons per minute. That's the easiest way that I know how to do it. So.
Well, that's a great analogy, Louis. Thank you. And again, we're trying to maximize the efficiency of the hydraulics and put the oil where it's necessary and reduce it in areas where we don't need as much. So.
Because one of the things that'll happen, if I'm trying to force 30 gallons per minute through a 10 gallon per minute orifice, what's going to happen is the hydraulic system is going to go onto what we call high pressure standby. And when it goes into high pressure standby, then it's going to jack the pressure up, and all it's going to deliver is going to be 10 gallons per minute at 3,000 psi. So now you got nothing left for the other flow controls, because even though you have 100 gallons plus available, you can only get whatever high pressure standby is. So if you want to maximize the efficiency of the hydraulics, make sure you set your flow control. Flow controls are probably the most important thing there is when you're running air seeders, so that you deliver the right amount of oil to every one of those valves. So.
Thanks, Louis, for that additional hydraulic information. So like I said, we made changes and set up remote valve number 1. You can go ahead and continue through the other 5 remotes and make the adjustments as necessary. Now on the right-hand side, we're going to go down to our headland management control. So basically, this tractor has the feature to utilize this one-touch button to shift the tractor, idle the tractor down, raise the implement. There's many features that can be all done with a one touch. So this section here is basically where you're going to set that up. The operator's manual gives very, very descriptive information on how to set up a sequence. New from the prior model tractors, you can actually build a sequence in the display standing still. The prior models, you actually had to be recording it in the field. Real time, which you can also do it that same way, but an enhancement to the feature is building a sequence here while you're standing still. So I will let you refer to the operator's manual for more details on that. Further down, we have our constant engine speed, our engine brake, and the decelerator percentage. So more engine setups. Scrolling down, transmission. Now we're going to talk about APM. What's APM, Louis? Heard you know lots about that.
Automatic field performance, productivity performance.
Yeah. So APM stands for Automatic Productivity Management with Power Drive, Power Shift tractors. And again, I reference these buttons down here to turn on field or road mode. So basically, you can program using this multifunction handle the speed you want the tractor to drive at, and you will let the tractor do the shifting for you. In the operator's manual, there are more details on setting that up, but it's strongly encouraged in the power drive tractors to maximize your efficiency to utilize the APM function. Also on this page, we can now select which startup gear we want the tractor to go into when we first put it into forward or reverse, simply by toggling between these gears. Moving down, steering setups. Again, brand new feature on this tractor is we can actually adjust between a slow, medium, fast steering adjustments. So that basically means adjusting how much the tractor is going to turn based on the rotation of the steering wheel. Auto diff locks, which we've had for a few years now. We do have 4 different degrees that we can select from. So basically with auto diff locks engaged, depending on which one you have selected, as you turn the tractor a certain amount, the diff locks are going to disengage so you can make the turn, and when you bring the tractor back straight again, it's going to engage those diff locks. And we have 4 different degrees to pick from. PTO, we've already referenced the PTO, utilizing these 3 buttons here, and again there is a dedicated page for the PTO. TPMS, or Tire Pressure Monitoring System. Of course, we have a quad track here, so we don't have air in the tracks, but we can use the TPMS sensors on our implement, okay? So the tractor, if ordered, if equipped, You will have sensors that you could install on the implement, or if you have a wheel tractor, install them on the tractor themselves. So you can monitor the pressures within the cab. So basically, we went through all of the tractor function setups available. More implement setups, because generally we're pulling something. I'm going to reference our work switch engagement. So basically, to trigger the mapping or the painting in the monitor, you need to designate what's going to trigger that. Okay, and we have a few different options to pick from: auto guidance engage, PTO, hydraulics. So basically, if I select rear remote 1, whenever I push to my detent on remote 1, it's going to trigger my mapping. Maybe I want to have it on the auto guidance. Okay. If you have an auxiliary implement that has a work switch on the implement itself, you can utilize this connector right here, which basically, for an example, if I take that connector and plug it into that port with a switch on my implement, a simple on-off switch, which is completing the circuit, I can also trigger my mapping. There are 2 more connectors here of importance, one of them being GPS output for an auxiliary monitor, for maybe a secondary air seeder monitor, as well as potentially if you were going to hook up to a scraper, which will require automatic valve control, this is where you will tie in for that. So now I'm going to exit out of here. I'm going to go back to my main menu or my toolbox menu. GPS setups. So basically in here, we are going to tell the monitor or the GPS system which GPS system source we're going to be using. In this case, we don't have RTK on this tractor at the moment, so I'm going to have RTK turned off, and I'm going to have WAS enabled. And I'll basically, your local dealer will probably have this set up for you during PDI, but this is where those changes are made. If equipped, we do have what we call AFS AccuTurn, which is an unlock feature that we have released now for these tractors, which basically will allow a one-touch button to turn the tractor around the field, at the end of the field, into your headland, your next headland rows, which is that setup is done on that in that position there. So basically, just to recap, our grower farm field, our toolbox menu here, which is going to be most of our setups, our tractor and our implement. This page here gives us all our important information of our tractor. So basically today I wanted to give you the lay of the land on the new monitor, where we located really important functions for as far as setup, our grower farm field, our toolbox, which is most of our setups, our tractor and our implement, as well as important parameters of the monitor. This new Pro 1200 monitor is an enhanced monitor for this new tractor. It has many more features and functions within it. But basically, we'll kind of leave that for today, and by all means, check with your local dealer for more details on the monitor. So, all right, Louis, what did I forget?
All right, a couple things to recap. First of all, we didn't talk anything about the DEF system, but the DEF components are located in behind this panel back in here.
This right-hand door.
So open up the right-hand door, and then you're going to find there's a filter that goes from the tank over to the dosing modules, and you're going to find another filter which is located in the dosing module itself. Refer back to your operator's manual, and in there it will show you to take the cap off. It's a little round cap about this big. Take it off. You get a new filter, and there'll be a tool in there that you shove inside the filter to help pull the old filter out, and then you shove the new filter back in there. So there's a primary filter and then a secondary filter in there. So you need to replace both. So that's common, we forget about those things, but all the tractors now are all equipped with DEF. Okay, so you're gonna have to maintain the system to make sure that it's reliable for you. The other thing is the batteries are located back in this compartment up in here. Okay, And I always tell people that before they start in the spring, it is not a bad practice to get your tractor close by, preferably take the batteries out. I totally understand they're big, heavy batteries, but disconnect them and charge them separately. So get ready for the season, get your batteries charged up, full charge, stick them back in there, and then your tractor will run a lot better during the season. The next thing is at 1200 hours on the engine, there's another filter that people forget, okay? And that's the crankcase breather filter. And Justin is going to point out, it's located at the back of the engine. And that filter needs to be replaced at 1200 hours, okay? So it's the cover needs to come off. There's a series of bolts on the cover. Take the bolts off, remove the cover, and then there's 3 bolts holding the filter in place. Pull the filter out and replace it with a new filter. Okay? You will have to replace the O-ring, which comes with the filter as well. So that's one that's quite often overlooked. So again, crankcase breather, you need to replace it 1200 hours. The other filter is your air cleaner, and as always the question comes out, okay, how often do I pull my air cleaner out? Do I do it every day and kick it and whatever else to clean the dirt out of it? Our best recommendation is to leave the filter in there until the light comes on. When the light comes on, you pull the filter out, you clean it, and then stick them back in there, okay? The inner filters, you never take the inner filter out unless you intend to replace it, all right? So that's your main filter, and it's kind of critical that it stays in there so that you don't accidentally put dust into your engine. Okay, so with that pretty much does the complete walk around. Unless you have something else you want to add, Justin?
No, that's. I think that sums it up, Louis. Again, we thank you very much for taking the time to watch our video today. We want you to have a successful spring seeding season, and we appreciate your business and enjoy your Case IH tractor for the upcoming season. Thank you.
All right, thanks again for listening.